Hebrews. This is our Prophets of Awakening. This is our evening Sabbath class, the 30th of July, 2022. We're going to pick up this morning. We're going to be reading out of the book of Leviticus, reviewing the laws that was given to Moses and the Israelites on Mount Sinai. And with that being said, I was going to ask everybody to like, share, subscribe to Prophets of Awakening channel, hit the notification button. Those that don't know, this is a non-Messianic channel, and by that we mean Tanakh and Torah. Tanakh is the Old Testament, the so-called Book of Remembrance, and the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament that was given to Moses by our Redeemer, the Lord of Hosts, on Mount Sinai. Okay, so with that being said, shalom, and welcome to the Prophets of Awakening channel, and welcome to our evening Sabbath class. We're going to do our moment of silence, our evening Sabbath prayer, Psalms, some current events, a little need-to-know information, and then we'll do some Q&A, and then we'll go back into our breakdown of Leviticus and the laws. Okay? So this moment of silence is for the Lord of Hosts and Yahweh and all that they're doing to bring about our deliverance in these last days. Okay? O Lord, righteousness and uprightness belongeth unto thee. Therefore we come before thee at this hour, seeking thy face and looking for righteousness and uprightness, that we may walk before thee as thy servant Solomon, David, Samuel, Hezekiah did, that we may walk before thee in truth and in righteousness and in the rightness of heart. Give unto us, O Lord, an understanding heart, that we may discern between good and bad. For we desire to walk after thee, O Lord, and to keep your commandments and your testimony and your statutes with all our heart and soul, to perform the words of the covenant that was written down by your prophets. O Lord, allow thy face to shine upon thy people. Hear our plea. Hear and do, O Lord. Hide not thy face from us, for we need you so very much at this hour. Peace be unto you. Okay? So with that being said, I'm going to read out of Book of Psalms. Okay? I'm going to read Psalms 27. It's the Lord is the light of my salvation. It's a Psalm of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even my enemies and my foes, came up upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. One thing have I desired for the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in the pavilion, in the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me up upon a rock. And now shall mine head be lifted up above my enemies round about me. Therefore will I offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing joy. I will sing praises unto the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me and answer me. And thou saidest, seek ye my face. My heart said unto thee, thy face, Lord, will I seek. Hide not thy face for from me, hide not thy face far from me. Put not thy servant away in anger. Thou hast been my help. Leave me not, neither forsake me, O God of my salvation. When my father and my mother forsook me, then the Lord took me up. Teach me thy way, O Lord, and lead me in the plain path because of my enemies. Deliver me not over unto the will of my enemies, for false witnesses are risen up against me, and such as breathe out cruelty. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So that was Psalm 27. It was the Lord is my light and my salvation. This is Psalm of David. So being that we know who the Lord of hosts is and what his role and all that is, we see right here with that it tells you because of who the Lord Yahweh is, he's a consuming fire. Nobody can stand before him. And a precept for that is when they came to Mount Sinai, he came down Mount Sinai, and first thing he told Moses was to let the people know not to put borders around the mountain for the people not to try to break through to come up and gaze at him, because he's not like the angels is. You can't come up on him. He's gonna reach out and burn you up. So we see right here who David is talking to in verse 6, Psalm 27:6. And now shall mine head be lifted up above mine enemies round about me. Therefore will I offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing praises unto the Lord. And 7, hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy upon me and answer me. Verse 8, and thou saidst, seek ye my face. My heart said unto thee, thy face, Lord, will I seek. Hide not thy face from me. Put not thy servant away in anger. Thou hast been my help. Leave me not, neither forsake me, O God of my salvation. So we see right here, David is seeking his face, seeking his presence, to be in the presence of the Lord. You can't come in around the Yahweh, same way you come around his angels, because he's going to consume you. You can't deal with sin. So let's look at a time when David came before the Lord, for the people that's not really understanding this. So I'm in 2 Samuel chapter 7. And the thing is that David wanted to build a temple, and he told Nathan, his prophet, that what his desires was. Nathan tell him in verse 3, said, go, do all this in thine heart. Then that night, the Lord of hosts came and told Nathan, go and tell David that Solomon's going to build a temple. So we're going to pick that up in 12, 2 Samuel 7:12. And when thy days are fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, Solomon, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of me, and with the stripes of the children of me. 15, and my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. 16, and thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. So this is what Nathan conveyed to David about what the Lord has told him. Then we pick it up in verse 17, 2 Samuel 7:17. And according to all these words, and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak unto David. Then verse 18, then went King David in and sat before the Lord. And he said, who am I, O Lord God, and what is my house that thou hast brought me here to? So we see right here, this ain't Yahweh, because he didn't went in and sat down before him. Just like going into the president, talk to the president in the White House. He went in there and sat down and talked to the Lord. And then Yahweh. Can't do that with Yahweh. Okay. So with that being said, any comments or anything before we move forward? Anybody got any comments on that? Any comments on Psalm 27? Okay. Got a couple of current events. We're not going to be on here long.
Of BRICS countries in Beijing, virtually, that is. It is meant to produce a layout for a new era of global development, as the hosts put it. But it will also focus on other items, Russia's war in Ukraine, for example, and the ongoing pandemic. Now, BRICS is an acronym for the 5 major emerging global economies, namely Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These 5 countries are home to 3.2 billion people, and that is 40%. Their economies account for almost a quarter of the world's GDP. Opening the meeting, China's leader Xi Jinping had this to say.
Human history, like a river, will keep moving forward with moments of both calm waters and huge waves. Despite changes in an evolving global environment, the historical trend of openness and development will not reverse course, and our shared desire to meet challenges together through cooperation will remain as strong as ever.
Let's talk more about the BRICS summit and the role India is playing with Charu Kartikeya, our correspondent in Delhi. Charu, what is India's main objective at this meeting, which is dominated, obviously, by the war in Ukraine and its ramifications?
Well, Chris, India's formal response to the summit and India's participation there has been very standard. It's been focused on the themes that India has been talking about ever since BRICS came up, and that is essentially a reform of the multilateral order in favor of developing countries. So even this time around, the formal response has centered around this theme only. But we do know that for the last couple of years, India has been involved in this effort to give out a message to the Western Bloc as well as its partners in BRICS that India is looking at partnerships across the world to further its own interests. So it's been trying to sort of balance interests of various groups. So on one hand, it participates in BRICS, and on the other hand, it participates in the Quad as well. So just a couple of weeks ago, India participated in the Quad summit. So soon, on very close on the heels of the Quad summit comes BRICS. So it's sort of a messaging to balance both the blocs, Chris.
Let's stay on the issue of Ukraine here for a second. Amid a barrage of Western sanctions, Russia's leader Vladimir Putin says that his country is actively redirecting trade and economic contacts towards BRICS countries. Have ties between Delhi and Moscow, trade ties for that matter, strengthened?
Well, they have definitely strengthened, Chris. We know that ever since the war broke out and ever since US and European nations imposed sanctions on Russia, we saw that India began buying Russian oil at discounted prices. Now, as the war progressed and as the West sanctions kept on intensifying, reports started coming in of India's purchases of Russian oil going up significantly and even exponentially later on at heavy discounted rates. And just yesterday, I think Russian President Vladimir Putin himself admitted that Russia's trade to India, China, and Brazil has gone up by about 38% in a very short period of time in just the first 3 months of this year. So that's a significant admission by Putin himself, and much to the chagrin of the Western Bloc. But yes, that remains to be the fact that trade ties are definitely on an upward swing, Chris.
And Charu, there's talk about expanding this BRICS group, adding new members to it. What is India's position when it comes to that?
Well, Chris, formally, India has made no issue about that. It has not made any significant statement as to whether it endorses or opposes the expansion of the BRICS grouping. But then there are several reports that do indicate that there seems to be some displeasure in New Delhi about China's plans to expand the grouping to include many other nations in it. India apparently feels that China wants to bring in these nations to bring in more members, which will be under Chinese influence to offset the weight of India and Russia in the summit. So there are reports that India is not happy and that it will try to resist these plans for BRICS expansion, Chris.
DW's Charu Kartikeya and Delhi.
Okay. Any comments on that? Yeah, so like I said, we see they put these sanctions, the European, the NATO and the West put all these sanctions on Putin, and Putin just went to the BRICS countries and started trading with them, and his everything went up. His sales and GDP, all that went up. So like I said, these people are working on a concerted effort to bring the United States down. So based on what we just heard about Putin being able to evade these sanctions, that to try to bring the Russian economy down, is doing just the opposite. And that's what this next video is about. Okay. Okay, got the wrong video. Go back. Just 1 minute.
To the West's prophecies for Russia, all the predictions about isolation and economic gloom and doom. See how they're playing out.
Russia is predicted to have a very sharp recession in 2022. Now we are predicting negative 6% for 2022. Before we were predicting negative 8.5. So that's the upward revision. But it's still fairly sizable recession in Russia in 2022. The European economy, we're reducing down the growth levels to about 2.6%. It's still positive.
You just heard the IMF chief economist. He says the Russian economy is doing better than expected. What was expected? A collapse of the Russian system. At least that's what the West had expected. Ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, the West has been slapping sanctions. This week, for example, began with the headline, Britain targets Russian officials in new wave of sanctions. Russia's officials have been targeted. Banks have been targeted. Brands have been targeted. Financial institutions have been targeted. Trade has been targeted. Basically, everything Russian has been sanctioned by the West. And what's the end result? Here's what else the IMF chief economist said, and I'm quoting. The Russian central bank and the Russian policymakers have been able to stave off a banking panic or financial meltdown when the sanctions were first imposed. He also said that the rising energy prices are, quote unquote, providing an enormous amount of revenues to the Russian economy. What about the West? The countries that slapped sanctions on Russia, how are they faring? Europe is bearing the brunt of the energy war. Look at Germany. On the 22nd of February this year, Germany suspended the certification of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. This move was supposed to hurt Russia. Today is the 27th of July, 2022, and Germany is in the middle of an energy crisis. By the end of this week, their energy supply will drop to 20%. Moscow says it's all because of technical reasons, but the world knows that Putin is pulling the strings. He is punishing the EU's biggest economy. European sanctions are basically boomeranged. The 27 EU states are scrambling to fill their gas storage. Case study number 2, the United Kingdom. On the 22nd of February, the UK froze assets of 5 Russian banks. Again, it is the 27th of July today. The IMF is upgrading Russia's GDP estimate by 2.5 percentage points. What about the UK? Its inflation has hit a 40-year high, and it faces a 50-50 chance of recession. And I'm not saying that the Russian economy has not been affected at all. Russia has taken a hit, no two ways about it. Its economy is going to contract by at least 6%. But for the West, it will be a Pyrrhic victory, if you can call it a victory at all. The UK, for example, is expected to grow by 0.5% in 2023. This, too, is from the IMF forecast. Moral of the story, sanctions don't work. And we told you this a long time ago. What's the point of these sanctions or of forcing a country to default on its debt when creditors know very well that the default is artificially orchestrated? Today, energy prices are shooting through the roof thanks to the Western sanctions. As for Russia, it is neither badly affected nor isolated. You heard what the IMF had to say. Now look at where Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has been jet-setting. He is on a tour of Africa. So far, he's visited Egypt, Congo, and Uganda. Next stop, Ethiopia. In Congo, Lavrov defended the war. He blamed the West for the rising prices and said there are no barriers to Ukraine's grain exports.
Unbiased experts also confirmed what we have said since the very beginning. The grain terminal of Odessa port is located at a considerable distance from the military part. There are no obstacles to starting deliveries of grain to customers in line with the deal signed, and we have not created any obstacles.
In Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni told Lavrov that he saw no reason to criticize the Russian war. Do you see what they're trying to do here? This tour of Africa is Russia's way of diversifying its diplomacy, of looking away from the West. It is geostrategic posturing. Russia accounts for less than 1% of foreign direct investment in Africa. This continent has by and large been a battlefield between the West and Asia and China, in fact. Africa has also refused to be party to Western sanctions, much like Asia. African countries have not joined the West in slamming Russia. Remember, 17 African nations abstained on a UN resolution against Russia's war. They see the futility of sanctions. And Russia sees another opportunity to counter the West.
Okay, so we see what they're doing is in backfire and it fell in their lap, so it ain't looking good. Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna go to some need to know information. Okay.
Follow Christian theology, which teaches a historical Jesus. But since there are many historical Jesuses, which one fits this theology? We want to discuss problems of Christians' belief of historical Jesus. The linchpin of this belief is known as the penal substitutionary atonement theory. It teaches that Jesus had to die on the cross to fulfill God's requirement for a worthy sacrifice that could atone the sins of mankind once and for all. But problems of this Christian belief is its reliance on a historical Jesus. One, if Jesus was a Jew, his death on the cross was not a fulfillment of the Old Testament sacrificial system, according to the Old Testament. Two, if Jesus was created by Rome or sacrificed by Rome, he failed to fulfill the sacrificial prophecies. There is scant evidence of the crucifixion anyway, because when we look at the evidence, we know that St. Helena, Constantine's mother, found the cross 300 years later. And this gives us evidence that the Romans had a lot to do with this theology. Jesus' death on the cross, undoubtedly, is now the most infamous crucifixion described only in the Christian Bible. It has not been confirmed by any archaeological evidence other than St. Helena's discovery 300 years later of the pieces of the cross. Even so, the biblical account of the crucifixion sits at the core of Christian belief, and the cross has been a symbol of Christianity for a long time. Even if Jesus was a perfect sacrifice, human sacrifices for sin were an abomination according to the God of the Old Testament in Deuteronomy 12:31, Ezekiel 16:20. How do you justify any Old Testament prophecies in the face of these prohibitions? Deuteronomy 12:31, it says, "Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods." So, if Jesus was a Jew, his death on the cross was not an acceptable sacrifice for your sins, according to the scriptures that we have already pointed out and many others. Christian prophecies say Jesus would become a perfect sacrifice. If you read Psalms 46-8, it says, "Sacrifice and meal offering you have not desired. My ears you have not opened. Burnt offering and sin offering you have not required. Then I said, Behold, I come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me, I delight to do your will, O my God. Your law is within my heart." But sin offerings had to be a female, not a male animal, according to Leviticus 4:32. So Jesus was not a female. So it violates a standing condition of a proper sacrifice if we are to accept that the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world represented Jesus. He was a male. So number one, it has already been shot out. The historical Jesus doesn't fulfill it. The sacrifice that took away the sins of the people was not put to death, but was set free into the wilderness according to Leviticus 16:9-10. And also sin offerings would have been clean without any wounds, but Jesus was beaten, abused, so he doesn't fulfill that. Those sacrifices that are blind or fractured or maimed or having a running sore or eczema or scabs, you shall not offer to the Lord, nor make of them any offering by fire on the altar of the Lord. Sacrifices on the altar by a high priest. This never occurred with Jesus. If you read Leviticus 1:13, it says, "But the entrails and the legs shall be washed with water. Then the priest shall offer the whole and turn it into a smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering by fire of the pleasing odor to the Lord." So Jesus' sacrifice is wrong. It's a wrong sacrifice. It does not fulfill any Old Testament prophecies. It's a different type of sacrifice. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you for making atonement for your lives on the altar. On the altar. For as life, it is the blood that makes atonement. So Jesus' blood was never taken to the altar. You hear Christians read Hebrews 9:22 that says, "Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins," which is a total typical lie, because here are the examples of the forgiveness of sins which was proclaimed without the shedding of blood. Application of oil, burning flour, burning incense, payment of money, gifts of jewelry, the release of a live animal or a scapegoat into the wilderness. So it is quite clear that the Romans created their own sacrificial system which they imposed on the whole world, hiding behind a Jewish system, but failing to fulfill the penal substitutionary atonement theory. It fails to meet the Old Testament prophecies. Yet there is archaeological evidence of coins, statues, grave markings that the historical Jesus, now followed by Christians, was a Roman creation. The abject love of the New Testament authors for Rome and their virulent hatred of Jews proves that this was a propaganda tool. And the New Testament was written during the Flavian period. And we know the origins of Jesus and the origins of Soter and Savior, Serapis Christus, that it began with our ancestors making a divinity for the Greeks, and then the Greeks passing it on to the Romans. The Jesus character is a continuation of the worship of the Soter image. Soter is the term that means salvation, based on Ptolemy I Soter, who is the actual Christian savior. Due to the senseless invasion he and his family partook in Northeast Africa, he forced our ancestors to make a god out of him. The New Testament documents were written as a propaganda tool with many underlying puzzles, codes, and dark twisted Roman tricks. You read this book, Creating Christ, How Roman Emperors Invented Christianity, you find a lot of evidence. The Jesus who advocated paying taxes to Caesar, turning the other cheek, and being cooperative with the Roman government is clearly written to support Roman emperors. The historical Jesus is a Roman male. The New Testament books promote Roman themes like render unto Caesar, pay your taxes, slaves obey your masters, Colossians 3:22. Roman judges and magistrates are appointed by God, Romans 13:1. When conscripted to walk a mile, for a Roman soldier, go 2 miles, Matthew 5:41. There is also a Jewish Jesus, whom we have proved to be found in the New Testament. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. And the authorities that exist are appointed by God, Romans 13:1. So this, when you read this, you obey the government. You think the government have been put in office by God. There are over 126 famous historians and writers from the 1st and 2nd century who never mentioned the fictional Jesus. The screaming silence of real history is very loud. All these. So the Roman emperors created a new Messiah and a new form of pacifist Judaism to replace the intolerant, hard-nosed one that was tearing the whole empire apart. In doing so, they fashioned a historical Jesus based on their political ideology. It is this Jesus who millions today follow, but he does not fulfill any Old Testament prophecy. You can see from this Judaism of the 1st century and also Christianity of the 1st century that they turn over the Judaism of the 1st century to suit their current propaganda too. No madman or lunatic shall enter, no simpleton or fool, no blind man or maimed or lame or deaf man, and no minor. None of these shall enter into the community, for the angels of holiness are in their midst. Dead Sea Scrolls 4:266. And then in Matthew now, he says, then great multitudes came to him, having with them the lame, the blind, mute, maimed, and many others, and they laid them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. So you can see that the historical Jesus here, the one that you are following, the one that the majority are following, is a Roman creation. It doesn't matter whether you paint it black, brown, blue. The Jesus, Christos, in you, as preached by others like Paul, emphasizes the spirit, a historical spirit, not a person. That's why they speak in guttural tongues. And this ancestor spirit is a Roman spirit. Hence, they speak in guttural tongues. There was a close vote that appointed Jesus as a divinity at the Nicene Council. With these major problems, it is clear that the historical Jesus leads his followers into becoming a Roman citizen by using the Roman constitution for them, which is the Bible, because the Holy Bible is a Catholic book. Since Jesus is a fictitious character that was invented by Europeans in the 1st century, and initially being called a Christian was considered as a reproach, pejorative innuendo, because the Greek and the Roman elites knew the history of this date. It is time to spew it out and adopt our own melanin-dominant traditions. If you are interested in following this, send us an email on join@marifado.com. Subscribe to our channel, Hamiti Hebrew Ethics. This page by LM Dumiz.
Okay, so we see right here, we got an Indian guy can even see through the New Testament. And we got these rubbernecks and these Hebrew Christians steady trying to hang on to this fictitious Jesus. This guy right here, he can't even hardly speak English, but he done rightly divided. You see? Any comments on that?
He went into really breaking it down. I mean, that's a great video. Yeah.
Right, yeah. That's something you can go back and watch.
Right, exactly.
So problems of the name of it is Problems of Christian. Let me get it. The problem of Christians' belief of historical Jesus. Okay, so I'm gonna open it up for some Q&A. Anybody got any comments about anything this morning, Sabbath class, or Friday night on Clubhouse, or anything they came across or heard during the week? They want to get some clarity on it or expound on it? Okay, everybody good? Okay, well, got some. Play this.
A little COVID news and some updates on these big pharma contracts. I want to start with what just happened in Uruguay. We don't talk about Uruguay all that often, but a judge there has actually just halted jabs to children because he wants to know what's actually hidden in these contracts. That's right, the contracts that the big pharma companies have with governments. Now, the judge's name is, we should all know this judge's name, by the way, because he should be celebrated. Judge Alejandro Requeri issued an injunction to the Uruguayan government to suspend all COVID-19 injections of children under the ages of 13 due to a lack of proof of safety and efficacy, as well as missing information on the composition of the so-called jabs. But also, even more than that, wanting to know about these contracts that these big pharma companies have with governments, and do they actually protect them from criminal prosecution? We know civil prosecution, of course, but the contracts that they have with these governments, because of any sort of adverse effects, can they be criminally prosecuted? And they want to know what's in these contracts, which
what
are
is the liability that they are writing off for themselves, right? Is the government just sort of willingly said, whatever, we'll sign on to this? Like, what did your government agree to when it allowed the dissemination and the injection of these medicines, right?
Right.
So what's there? The judge is saying, until we see what our government has agreed to, we're not going to allow children. And I wonder why just this age limit, 13 and below, why it wouldn't be for everybody, right? Or is it because there's an agreed upon age? You would think, right, that there's maybe an agreed upon age that you think that they need to continue to be vaccinated, or what? And it's not necessary. And what's interesting is they're asking for the government contracts, not necessarily like we've seen in the United States by the Freedom of Information request, information about the trials. They want the deal, the money. Right.
So, yeah, Uruguay's Ministry of Public Health has agreed to go through. Here's what they say, and I'll put this up on the screen on my website, laptop here. Conditions that must be met before COVID-19 injections are reinstated for children under the ages of 13 include, number one, the publishing of all purchase contracts for the injections, including any documents attached to them, especially those that detail the compositions. Now, I'm reading from what they've said. This is not me saying this. This is what the Uruguayan Ministry of Public Health. They want the compositions of the substances in the vaccines.
Oh, they do want that. Okay.
The preparation of a text to be given to guardians of children scheduled to be vaxxed that informs parents of the composition of the injections, the risks and benefits, the clarification that the injections have an emergency, not definitive authorization. So these are, again, pointing out that these are emergency use authorization, not actually been definitive authorization.
Well, that brings me to the point of the fact that now the FDA and the CDC are going to ask Americans and perhaps other people around the world to take another booster here in the fall based on a brand new injection. And there are all kinds of issues with it, right? So there's an Atlantic piece that I'd like to draw your attention to because it sort of lays out this argument that new COVID vaccines will be ready this fall, but America won't be. And I'm interested in these tidbits of how it frames the fact that there has been that the pharmaceutical industry is way behind the 8 ball. Is that the expression?
Yeah,
Okay.
behind the 8 ball. Ask Philip. He's our resident pool pro, right? You actually tour and play pool almost professionally, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I played Las Vegas Nationals 8 ball last year.
So any
Impressive.
Behind the 8 ball works.
Yeah, any pool reference, you got to bring Philip.
Okay, sorry. It means that you're like
That's okay.
you're behind, right? That
Yeah, behind the 8 ball, or you're like the target, right? If you're behind the 8 ball, right?
No, it means because you don't want to sink the 8 ball until you've sunk the rest of your balls,
if your
right?
ball is
So-
behind the 8 ball, you're in trouble because you can't hit the 8 ball first. So
Right.
if you're behind the 8 ball, you're
I
Hands
think that's not the expression that I wanted then, because what I mean to say
hands off my balls.
is that okay, that behind the 8 ball then means you're in the weeds. Right?
But yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
So what this Atlantic piece is saying is that the United States is actually way behind in developing this vaccine that the health industry was hoping for in front of the fall so that we could head off flu season. But what's interesting about it, if we just pull up these quotes, it says that the Biden administration could soon offer booster shots to all adults, which is an amuse-bouche, which is like a palate taster for fall's Omicron-focused vaccines, which may not debut until October at the latest, by which time BA.5, which we're all supposed to be so afraid of, may be long gone and potentially too late to forestall a cold weather surge. Can we go to the next screen, please? It says that an FDA advisory meeting in late April, Marks told the experts that the fall's vaccine composition should be decided no later than June. The agency didn't announce the new ingredients until the final day of last month, that's June 30th, and it chose to include BA.4 and BA.5, the remaining Omicron subvariant, rather than the long-gone BA.1, which Pfizer and Moderna had been working with. So this decision, meaning they didn't really
So if you want to watch that, all of that, it's Judge Pfizer and Moderna can't hide this anymore. So what you should get out of this is that should be expecting something come in the fall. We already know about the blackouts and the high prices and all that coming in the fall. They got this coming in the fall too. Right here. Jab. Coming back. So with that being said, I want to shine a light on this right quick because a lot of people need to see this. They don't need to see this Jezebel spirit. We want to see it firsthand. So you can identify it when you see it. Okay?
Movie. Plots are usually pretty similar. There will be a conflict in the film, then that conflict grows. It continues to get worse until someone steps in to fix the conflict. The book of 1 Kings is much similar. David is king at the beginning of the book, but he is about to die. After him, Solomon, David's son, takes over. He builds the temple, However, from there, he makes some poor decisions. Then almost every king after him gets worse. They're often bringing in idol worship and turning away from God, until finally we get to King Ahab. Ahab becomes the climax, as he is the worst king of all. However, much of his wickedness is due to his evil wife, Jezebel. 1 Kings 21, verse 25, talks about both Ahab and Jezebel. It says, "But there was no one like Ahab who sold himself to do wickedness in the sight of the Lord, because Jezebel, his wife, stirred him up." While Ahab is guilty of his own sin, much of his downfall was due to his wife, Jezebel. Jezebel was a pagan woman, which means she did not follow the God of Israel. Instead, she worshipped multiple false gods, which include Baal and Asherah. She not only did not follow the God of Israel, but hated him. In 1 Kings 18, she purposely tries to kill the prophets of the God of Israel, a gross act of evil. It's unspeakable to think that Jezebel would stand in such bold defiance to the God of Israel, that she would seek to kill his servants. There were a few times in the life of Ahab when it looked as if he would repent. There were even times when it looked like he wanted to follow the ways of God. However, every time there was a ray of sunshine, Jezebel quenched the hope. The most notable is the story of 1 Kings 21. In this chapter, there was a vineyard that was owned by a man named Naboth. Ahab wanted the vineyard and was even willing to buy it. Naboth rejected the offer because it was against the law of God for him to sell it. Ahab was very upset and went back to his palace to mourn. However, Jezebel took matters into her own hand and killed Naboth. This leads to Ahab buying the vineyard for himself. Did Ahab kill Naboth? No, his evil wife Jezebel did. However, he could have rejected buying the vineyard and put his wife in jail for the murder of Naboth. Yet, due to his own evil pleasure and the evil hand of Jezebel, he gave in to his sinful desire. It seems
That's what a rubberneck is. When you hear me say rubberneck, that's what a rubberneck is. Going along with something they know ain't right. Okay?
seems almost like Ahab was a puppet in the hand of Jezebel. In 1 Kings 18, Elijah, who was a prophet from God, challenges the idol worshippers of Baal to see whose God is the real God. They see whose God can catch a bull on fire. Of course, the 450 prophets of Baal could do nothing because their God is not real. They tried for many hours and failed. Yet God set the bull of Elijah on fire after a single prayer from Elijah. In the midst of the chapter, it says this in 1 Kings 18, verse 19. "Now, therefore, send and gather all Israel to me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." All of these prophets are not sitting at King Ahab's table, but at the table of Jezebel. She is really the one with the influence. While Ahab is guilty of his sin, it seems that Jezebel is the puppet master behind them. The story of Ahab and Jezebel is a story we must take note of. When we surround ourselves with evil people, it's likely we are going to make evil decisions. Their influence, and sometimes their manipulation, will cause us to walk in sin. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 says, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with the darkness?" We must be careful not to marry someone who does not know the Lord. If we do, it is possible for them to draw us into evil. Of course, if you find yourself married to an unbeliever, you should not leave. However, you must be on guard that your spouse does not lead you astray, as Jezebel did with Ahab. We all
bread and water. So King Ahab didn't cut off the prophets of the Lord. Jezebel, his queen, did. In those times and in that society, do you know what it would look like for the king to be led by his queen? But nonetheless, Jezebel massacred the prophets of the Lord. The Bible also says in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 19, "Now therefore send and gather all Israel to me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table." The Bible says the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah ate at whose table? Not King Ahab? Not the head of the home? But at Jezebel's table. You see, you need to be careful when it comes to the spirit of Jezebel. It's a spirit that has a voice of influence and control. She overshadowed her husband, undermined his authority. But she also incited her husband to evil because 1 Kings chapter 21 verse 25 says, "There was none who sold himself to do what was evil in the sight of the Lord like Ahab, whom Jezebel his wife incited." And I want you to learn this. People often associate the spirit of Jezebel with sex and seduction and promiscuity. But I believe these are just some of the fruits of this spirit. At the core of Jezebel, at the core of this wicked spirit, is control. It's a controlling and manipulative spirit that takes people captive. It's a spirit that has no gender. Just because it's a spirit named after a woman, that does not mean it can't be found in men. As I've said, it's a spirit of control. And if you look throughout your life, it's usually the people who are power hungry or control mongers that turn out to be the most hurtful and nastiest people we have to deal with. And look at it this way. In the church, at the root of most conflicts, the issue is to do with control. Pastor versus elders, deacons versus choirs, this ministry versus that ministry. That's the spirit of Jezebel. Or how about in the home? How many conflicts in a marriage are about control? The Bible says, "Husbands, love your wives." It does not say control your wives. It says love them. Do you love your wife, sir? Because if you want to control her, if you're trying to control what she does, what she says, signs of being power hungry, signs of wanting to be in control, then you, my friend, are on a dangerous path. The best thing you can do.
Okay. Any comments? Is the internet recognizable?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you got some kind of semblance of what Jezebel's spirit is. So you should be able to have as identify now if you see it and know to run in the other direction. Okay? So I'm going to read chapter 5 out of Leviticus, and then we're going to close out for the Sabbath. And yeah, okay. I'm in Leviticus chapter 5. Okay. Okay. Chapter 5 says, and if a soul sins and hear the voice of swearing and is witness whether he have seen or known of it, if he do not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. Or if a soul touch any unclean thing, whether it be a carcass of an unclean beast, or the carcass of an unclean cattle, or the carcass of an unclean creeping thing, and if it be hidden from him, he shall be unclean and guilty. Or if he touch the uncleanness of a man, whatsoever uncleanness it be that a man should be defiled with it, and it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty. Or if a soul swear, pronouncing with his lips to do evil, or to do good, whether it be that a man shall pronounce with an oath, or it be hid from him, when he knoweth of it, then he shall be guilty in one of these. And it shall be when he shall be guilty in one of these things, that he shall confess that he hath sinned in that thing. And he shall bring his trespass offering unto the Lord for his sin which he hath sinned, a female from the flock, a lamb or a kid of goats, or a sin offering for a sin offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his sin. And if he be not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring for his trespass offering, which he hath committed, 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons unto the Lord, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. And he shall bring them unto the priest, who shall offer that which is for the sin offering first, and bring off his head from his neck, but shall not divide it asunder. And he shall sprinkle of the blood of the sin offering upon the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood shall he wrung out at the bottom of the altar. It is a sin offering. And he shall offer the second of the burnt offering for a burnt offering, according to the manner. And the priest shall make an atonement for him for his sin which he hath sinned, and it shall be forgiven him. But if he be not able to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he that hath sinned shall bring for his offering the 10th part of an ephah of fine flour for the sin offering. He shall put no oil upon it, neither shall he put any frankincense thereon, for it is a sin offering. Then shall he bring it to the priest, and the priest shall take his handful of it, even a memorial thereof, and burn it on the altar, according to the offering made by fire unto the Lord, and it is a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him by touching his sin that he hath sinned in one of these, and it shall be forgiven him, and the remnant shall be the priest as a meat offering. It says the law of the trespass offering. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, if a soul commit a trespass and sin through ignorance in the holy place of the Lord, then he shall bring for his trespass unto the Lord a ram without blemish out of the flock, with thy estimation by shekels of silver after the shekel of the sanctuary for trespass offering. And he shall make amends for the harm that he hath done in the holy thing, and shall add the 5th part thereof, and give it unto the priest. And the priest shall make an atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him. And if his soul sin and commit any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandments of the Lord, though he was it not, yet is he guilty, and shall bear his iniquity, and he shall bring a ram without blemish out of the flock, with thy estimation, for a trespass offering unto the priest, and the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his ignorance wherein he sinned, wherein he erred, and with it not, and it shall be forgiven him. It is a trespass offering. He have certainly trespassed against the Lord. Okay, so that was Leviticus chapter 5. Anybody got any comments on that? Leviticus 5? Anything stand out? Okay, so what I noticed about that, they tell the things about the New Testament is that the commandments and the law that the Most High gave us, they want to say it was a schoolmaster, and that we could never fulfill it, we could never live up to it. But we see right here, just in Leviticus chapter 5 alone, for instance, in verse 18, he shall bring a ram without blemish out of the flock, with thine estimation, for a trespass offering unto the priest, and the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning this concerning his ignorance, where he erred, watches not, and it shall be forgiven him. So it's forgiven him. So the thing is that you want to say in the New Testament was that the blood of goats and rams and all that didn't take away the sin. But he tell you right here, he was forgiven. Right? So somebody got it wrong. Verse 16, chapter 5 of Leviticus. And he shall make amends for the harm that he have done in the holy thing, and shall add a fifth part thereof, and give it unto the priest. And the priest shall make an atonement for him with a ram of a trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him. So something to think about is the Lord of hosts sacrificed a lamb for Adam. Right? So we see right here, they bring these lambs, these rams and goats and bullocks to these priests. So how much more so is Adam's sin forgiven? And the Lord of hosts, the one made the sacrifice on the altar in Genesis. These priests right here. So, like I said before, it's a dead cat on the line somewhere. Okay. So, with that being said, anybody don't have nothing, we're gonna close it out right here. Anybody got any comments or about anything they want to talk about before we go? Close out the week, close out the Shabbat.
Shalom. I just want to say, with you reading chapter 4 of Leviticus this morning and chapter 5 this evening, there was no mention of a human sacrifice at all.
Right.
At
all. It ain't right. One. And the guy on the video that I just played earlier, he came, it's like he edified what was said this morning.
Exactly.
Right. So, like I said, it's time out for dealing with that. It's, it's too many other things that's coming up, truths that's coming up. You don't have time to deal with something that's not going to benefit Israel at all. No kind of way. All right. So with that being said, let me hit this right quick. Yeah. So I want to say shalom, and I enjoyed everybody again for another week, and I enjoyed them for another Shabbat. And I'll see everybody on Tuesday for our Israelite Sabbath class. And like I said, you can go to Facebook and you are impressed by what I'm doing with Shiloh, then give me some support. Shalom.
Shalom.